Nobody's ever gonna take your place. Yeah, I think we should meet in the middle. I follow you cause you're the light of the day. I need you like you need me, it's so simple. It's so simple.
Welcome back to the Gen X Juggler podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Do you remember back when we were kids and our favorite television shows went into reruns for the summer? We enjoyed getting to rewatch our favorite episodes of Happy Days, Silver Spoons, Family Ties, Growing Pains, you name it. While the actors and the rest of the crew got a little time off to rest and prepare to give us their best in the upcoming season. In that same spirit, I'll be re-releasing some of your favorite episodes over the next few weeks. I hope your summer is off to a wonderful and relaxing start, and I hope you enjoy this encore presentation of The Willingness to be Willing. I'm happy you stopped by because today we will be joined by a very special guest. But first, let me give you some background. Remember last week when I told you I'm an only child? Well, I didn't have siblings to grow up with, but I did have cousins, which is the next best thing. And I had creative cousins, which is even better. Of course, we didn't have helicopter parents. It was the 80s. Ours were more like parking garage parents. They'd leave us in the morning and come back for us at night once their workday was done, which gave us plenty of time to come up with good ideas for fun. One of my earliest memories is standing in a line with 4 of my cousins. We ranged in age from probably around 3 to around 9. I was in the middle. We were getting the 3rd degree because somebody had graffitied the garage door with hot pink lipstick. It looked really cool, but my uncle was furious. No one ever confessed, so he just punished all of us to make sure justice was served. If I remember correctly, justice involved a bucket of soapy water and a lot of elbow grease. I may or may not know the identity of the actual purveyor of Lipstick Gate, and she may or may not be my guest on the podcast today. My cousin Krystal and I were very close growing up. You might have had as much fun as we did back in the day, but I guarantee you didn't have more. And now, here we are adulting. It's certainly not as easy as we thought it would be. You know, the thing about we Gen Xers is that we've been on the planet long enough to make our fair share of mistakes, and I raise my hand very high to that one. But we have the choice to let those mistakes define us and defeat us, or to learn and grow from our mistakes and come out on the other side better and hopefully a little wiser. My cousin Krystal joins us today on the podcast to share her story of turning missteps into triumphs. Before I bring Krystal on, I do have a little bit of housekeeping to take care of. The information presented in this podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice in any field, including legal, medical, financial, or mental health. Always consult a qualified professional regarding your specific situation. The views expressed by guests on this podcast are their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the producers. And speaking of the host and the producer, I am she and she is me. On this podcast, I struggled a little bit with getting the audio right when bringing a guest in, especially whenever we spoke at the same time. So I apologize for the places where the audio is a little weird, but I hope you can still really enjoy listening to what Krystal has to say. And now, without further ado, let's bring in Krystal. Thank you for joining me, Krystal.
Hi.
Hi.
Glad to be here.
I'd love for you to share your story with us today.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So let's start at the beginning, I guess. So I am a recovering addict and alcoholic. I've been clean since August 31st of 2019. It's been by the grace of God that I'm still here and that I still have a family. And it's just, I don't know, life is so good now, you know? It's hard to believe where I've been and where I'm at now. It's been a crazy, imperfect journey.
I know that your story will be inspirational to a lot of people listening today. I appreciate you sharing it with us.
Thank you. I grew up in a semi small town. I had a good childhood. My parents were good. I didn't grow up with, a lot of trauma as far as there's a lot of people that deal with addiction that grew up with trauma, and I didn't. Um, I had a good childhood, but I realized through this journey that I was an addict at a very young age. I took my first drink of alcohol at age 12, and I liked
Wow.
it. And that progressed into, I had a back injury in my 20s, started taking pills. It just kind of snowballed from there. I did really well. I have 4 kids, and I did really well, during my pregnancies and even years after having kids. And then I guess it was around 2016 that's when things really, really got bad. I had a job that um, I had been in for 10 years and dealt with sexual harassment on a daily basis. I started taking methamphetamine. I think it was probably about, I guess it was June of 2017. And then by January of 2018, my husband and I were both in jail. And we have
Right.
lost our kids, lost our jobs, lost, pretty much everything. And of course, I was still playing the victim, blaming the cops, those dadgum cops. If they would have just left us alone, we would have been fine. But that was not the case. But even after getting out of jail, I still was kind of in denial. I moved in with my sister. That was one of the stipulations. We didn't have running water or electricity at the house because we had spent, the month before we were just using all the time. The boys
Mhm.
were with their grandparents, and we just we fell in so bad and still were convincing ourselves that it wasn't as bad as it was, you know. And I think we both kind of had this delusion that we would be able to get out of this anytime we really wanted to, but that it wasn't that bad
Mm.
yet. So I moved in with her, worked at a pig farm, and then I wasn't doing drugs, but I started drinking because I thought it's just
Mm.
alcohol. Alcohol's not that bad. Alcohol's
Yeah,
better than drugs any day, but that's a lie.
I can see
That's
that
a
logic. Yeah.
huge lie. And after about a year, I had gone to, I would always leave work and go buy a 12 pack, and I would drink it all every night. I'd drink all of
Oh my
it and go
gosh.
to bed and then wake up and go to work.
Wow.
And I think it was a Friday night, I had drank it all. And I woke up the next morning and I had a fresh 12 pack with one beer missing in the refrigerator. And I don't remember going to get it. I don't
Oh
remember
my.
the trip that I made to the store to pick it up. And
Wow.
I thought, this is definitely getting out of hand because I would tell myself I'm not going to drink tonight, and then of course I would.
Yeah.
So I that night I drunk dialed I googled rehab centers, and I literally just flicked the screen and it scrolled and I hit one, and it was for a place called Recovery Unplugged. And I was like, nah, I'll call them. I was still
Wow.
kind of, they're not going to help me. No one's going to be able to help me. I'm unhelpable. So I
Oh
called
my
them
gosh.
and they were
So you
like,
were drunk? You were drunk when you
I was
called
drunk.
them?
Yes,
It's
I was drunk.
amazing that you had the presence of mind to do that.
They were like, when was your last drink? And I was like, I'm drinking now. I think that this was on a Sunday because I had work the next day. And the next morning, I got up and was going to work, and I got this phone call from a weird number. And they were like, hey, we've got all your information. You're all set up and ready to go. When can you be here? And I was like, who is this? They were like, this is the rehab center that you called. And I was like, okay. So I went to work, and I thought, if I'm able to go, I should just go. And so I
Mhm.
talked to my work and everything, and I think it was 2 days later, maybe a day, because Clay and I weren't living together. He was in Spearman and I was in Texline. And I called him
Mm.
and I said, hey, I'm gonna go to rehab and you're gonna take me. And he was like, okay. So he drove me to rehab, and it was in Austin. And I, I didn't choose Austin for any particular reason. I think I think I chose Austin because I felt like Dallas was too close, because I didn't want to go and then be able to call somebody and say, "Hey, come pick me up." And
Oh, that
so
makes
I
sense.
made it
That was
I made it
smart.
far enough away that if I went, I didn't have a choice but to stay.
Mhm.
So I said, it's a what, 10-hour drive. And
Yeah.
I said, "You're going to take me." And he did. And I drank. I drank the whole way there. 10-hour drive. I drank and I would pass out and I would wake up and say, "Oh, I feel terrible. I need rehab." And then I would drink a little bit and I would say, "You know what? I don't need rehab. I'm fine. I feel
Oh
fine.
my
I don't
God.
need it." And I would pass out and I would wake up and say, "Oh my gosh, I need to go. I'm so sick. I need rehab." It was a long trip. Clay was like, "Okay." I did that, and then I think we got to the place early that next morning, and they were so nice. Everybody was so nice. I was expecting so much judgment, like, "How could you do
Yeah.
this? Like, what made you do this?" And they weren't. They were super nice. They checked me in. They sent me to bed. They, gave me some vitamins, some food, and they were like, "Just sleep. Like, that's
Oh,
all you
that's
need to
great.
do." And so I did, and then I went to they have the detox is like a week or so, depending on how messed up, how many drugs or alcohol you have in your system.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed there about a week, and then I went to the what is it called? Residential, where you basically live in a house with a whole bunch of people and you go to class every day, or it's not class, it's group. You go to
Mm-hmm.
groups every day and you work the 12 steps. But this one was music based. It wasn't it wasn't really faith based or,
Hmm.
any, not that I would have been opposed to that, but this one was
Yeah.
just more surrounded by music. Stayed at residential for 30 days, and they told me when I was there, if you go back and keep doing the same things, you're going to drink again. And I was like, "Well, after 30 days I've learned everything I need to know, so I am good. I'm good and I can go and conquer the world now."
Oh,
And
wow.
I went right back to text line, and I think within about 3 days I was drinking again. But not only that, I was going to meetings. They had one meeting a week in Clayton, and I would go to that meeting after drinking all week and then pretend like I had, 60 days of sobriety or, however long.
Oh, wow. So you were
And
still in
I was
complete
still
denial.
in, yeah. So, but during this time, Clay called and he said, "I'm going to go to rehab too." And he got on a plane and his parents flew him to Recovery Unplugged. And so while he's in treatment, I'm out of treatment now and I'm drinking again. And he was close to the end of his he stayed though. He did, because after residential you have IOP and then OP, and he stayed through the whole thing. And I told him one day, I was like, "Look, I'm drinking again. I tried rehab, it didn't work. Like, just go on because I'm just going to be stuck in this place. It didn't work for me."
Oh my gosh.
And
So
he called me back.
you were telling him to go
Yeah.
live his
I
life
was like,
without you?
"Yep, yep." I was like, this didn't work for me. Hopefully it will for
Yeah.
you. Good luck." And honestly, I kind of felt like he wasn't going to make it either. Because I had this idea in my head that he was worse than me, to
Mhm.
like make myself feel like not such a failure. I thought, well, he's worse than I am. So if I didn't make it, he's probably not going to either.
Mhm.
And he killed it. He killed it. And he called me back after I told him I came clean and told him I'm drinking again. I can't stop. He called me back and he said, "I talked to the rehab center and they want you to come back. So to, go pack a bag." And I did.
Wow.
I drunk packed too, by the way. I packed cords that I didn't even have electronic devices for. Packed some 22 long shot shells. I
Oh
didn't
my
have
god.
no. I was like, "I don't know." Clay goes, "What were you gonna do with these? Throw them at somebody?" I was like, "I don't know."
Okay, I have to say something really quick. The audio cut out a little bit when you were saying what type of packing you did, but I heard you say, "I drunk packed." Is
Yes,
that what
I
you said?
drunk packed. I drunk packed, and I had things in there that even later I was like, "I don't remember even packing this, and why I packed it. I have no idea. It didn't make any sense."
Oh my
But I
goodness.
did. I packed the bag. I went to bed. I woke up the next morning and called him, and he was like, I said, "Well, I packed the bag. What do I do?" He was like, "You get in your car and you drive here." And I was like, "Okay." So I did. And at this time, he was living in a sober living house in Austin, and I went back to rehab. I went back to detox, And this time I was like, you know what? I'm going to stay. He is killing it. And so I'm going to stay and I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to go through the whole thing.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
I did. And I guess that was about, takes about 3 months to go through the detox, residential, IOP, OP, all of it. And the recovery community in Austin is top notch. Like there are so many meetings, there are so many people in recovery here. There's so many sober houses and sober events and sober things that people can do where you don't feel it's not like where you're in more rural community where everybody knows your business and everybody's judging
Yes.
you because how could you and all of that.
Mhm.
And so when we were both about to be done with all of it, they said, we think it would be a good idea for you guys to go to sober living separately because they have women's houses, men's houses, and they were like, we think it would be a good idea. Well, I
Mhm.
didn't want to do that. I was like, I think that's stupid. Like, we're good now. Because, you think that when you're 30, 60, 90 days clean, you think, oh, I've got this. But
Yeah.
there's so much more to it. But they recommended that. And I thought, well, clearly I am terrible at making my own decisions. So I should probably let somebody else make them for me for a while. I was like, okay, we'll do it, but just for like a month or so. That's all I want. We ended up
Mhm.
doing it for about 3 years. We lived separate in our sober living. So that was hard, but also
Imagine.
it was great because we had to learn how to be sober on our own before we could learn how to be sober together, you know.
That makes so much sense.
So we did that, and in the meantime, I was actually on probation for the when I had gotten arrested, and I called my probation officer, and they were furious with me for leaving. I left without permission, basically.
Because you were
It
just
didn't
desperate. You were
it
just
Yeah, it didn't matter that I was leaving to go get help. They were like, "Well, you didn't get permission, so we have revoked you." And they wanted me to go to jail. And so I kept in contact with my attorney and I was like, "Look, is there any way that they'll just let me pay this off?" And he said, "No, they want you arrested. They want you to come back." And I was like, "Okay."
no.
That would have been in 2021, 22. When was the it was 2020 was the bad year. So this was in
Yes.
2021. So 2021, I think it was May 11th actually of 2021, I turned myself in to Travis County. Sober, hadn't had anything in, over a year, and I was
So
like, "Okay,
did you ever have the thought, because I think I would have tended to do this. I've tried, I've worked so hard, and I've done all this good, and now my past is coming back anyway, and they just want me to
yeah,
go to jail. Like, why did I even do did you ever get discouraged
oh,
like
yeah,
that?
yeah. And I played the victim on that because I would watch my friends, they would have court dates and they were like, the judge dismissed all the charges because I'm doing so well. And I was like, God, why
Um,
can't they do that with me? Why are they making me go back and do this when I've done so good? And I
yeah,
prayed about it and I prayed about it and I bargained with God and I finally accepted the fact that this was going to happen. So I thought, okay, then God just be with me through it because I don't have the strength to do this on my own.
yeah,
And I finally, I went and told my boss, and I was completely upfront with them from the beginning. I was like, look, I'm an addict in recovery. I told them about, that I had charges, that I was on probation, that I came here for rehab, and they were wonderful. And so I
good.
went, told her, she said, "When are you going to turn yourself in?" And I was like, "Tomorrow." And so they immediately got things in order so that I could resign from my position so that I could be rehireable later, maybe. I didn't even know
Good.
how long I was going to be gone. So I went and turned myself in. But it was kind of funny because when I was in Travis County, they only have 10 days to pick you up. And
Mhm.
they said, "Well, we don't know if they're coming. And if they don't, then we're going to let you out." And I was like, "Okay, so then I don't have a warrant?" And they were like, "No, you still have a warrant, but we can't hold you any longer than that." And
Wow.
I called Clay and I was crying and I said, "Look, I had the courage to turn myself in once, but I don't have the courage to do it again. I was like, we're going to have to move to Costa Rica. Something's going to happen. I'm going to go on the run because I'm here. And if
Yep.
they let me out, I'm not coming back on my own. So
Heck yeah.
I was like,
I'm with
but God,
you
by
on
the
that.
grace of God, on day 10, they showed up. And I was like, you better be glad because I was going to bolt. The looks on their faces when I showed up, I was like, I'm here to turn myself in. And it was like they all looked at each other like, we've never had this happen. What do we do? She's here voluntarily, And then he said, I can't find the warrant. And I was like, okay, good. Maybe they dropped it. No, he eventually found it. But I was like, the nerves and the stress of doing that, I
Oh,
knew I couldn't
man.
do it again. I knew I couldn't do it
Yeah.
again. Hansford County came and picked me up and took me back. And I stayed there for, I want to say, another month and a half, probably. I stayed at Hansford County,
Mhm.
and they told me once they had arrested me and I was in jail in Hansford County, they said, if you will just pay the fines, we will give you an extra month off of your sentence. And
Wow.
I was furious. I was furious because I had been trying to tell them that the whole time, like, let me just pay what
Mm.
I owe and be done. But they said no. And so Clay called and he was like, we can do this. Like, if you want to do that. I said, no. I said, I'm not going to give them more money to take 30 days off my sentence when they've already made me go through all of this to come back and serve my time. I'm not doing that.
Yeah,
So
that makes
I
sense.
didn't. I didn't. And I ended up spending, I think I went in July, the middle of July, they sent me to Gatesville State Jail. Uh, they sent me there, and I didn't get out until October. I want to say it was around like the 28th of October. But yeah, it was horrible. I don't 10 out of 10 do not recommend going to prison. That was a terrible time. But God got me through it. I didn't have any major problems. I pretty much got along with everybody there. Everybody there was pretty much in jail for drugs in some way, shape, or form. Some people were there that had planned on going right back out and doing the same things again. But then there was a few that wanted to change and didn't want that lifestyle anymore. And those were kind of the people that I tried to connect with. And because I had already been through it, I had already been sober for over a year. So I was kind of glad that I got a chance to talk to some of these women and let them know that, life after this doesn't have to be what it was. I got through it, I got out and put that all behind me. That's
Awesome.
a big part of recovery is you got to take care of the past. You got to make
Mhm.
your amends. You got to deal with your stuff, everything that you caused and the harm that you did, you've got to deal with it before you can move forward. And it may take you years to do that. There's still things that pop up that I'm like, you know what? I should make an amends for that because I totally forgot about that. So that was a big, big step. And I'm as terrible as it was, I'm so thankful
Yeah,
for it.
that's
But
awesome. It's awesome that you can see it as a positive and see it as
mhm,
part of your steps of making amends for the past.
yep. Oh, I prayed, Debbie. It was probably a year's worth of prayers for God to not let me go back. Please don't make me do this. Please, God, don't make me do this. And when I realized that this was pretty much inevitable, it
Mhm.
my prayers changed to, okay, God, get me through it because
Mm,
I can't. I can't do this. And He
yeah,
did. He did.
that's awesome.
I got back home. I was homeless, didn't have anywhere to go. Clay was still in his men's sober living. So I stayed with him a few nights and I had planned on going to another Oxford house, another women's house. And I called my old boss. She said, "Well, let me make some phone calls and I'll call you back." And it was probably a week or so, maybe two. I knew
Yeah,
I wasn't going to be able to stay in the house with Clay at the men's house and you can't do that.
yeah.
And she called me back and she said, "We want you to come back. You won't be in the same position that you were in, but you can come back and it'll be the same pay." And she was like, "So what do you have going on right now?" And I said, "Well, right now I'm trying to find somewhere to live." And she is single and she said, "I have a spare bedroom." if you want to live with me, she said that would be fine. You can live with me until you get on your feet. I lived with Becky for about a year, and I just paid her like what I would have paid at an Oxford house. I paid her
Mhm.
rent, but it worked out perfectly. It was totally God because everything just kind of fell back into place. It was like, okay, you've done what I asked you to do, and now, here's where you're going to go from here. And it was like God led all of it, and things just kind of fell like dominoes, just like they were supposed to. It was crazy. Something else, something else that's kind of funny is that I work for a company, and
Mhm.
what they do is they create reference standards. So if you ever get pulled over by the cops and they breathalyze you, they use our standards to tabulate those devices so that they're accurate.
Oh
So
my
we
gosh.
make, yeah, yeah.
So you're
It's,
now on the other side of the process.
I tell people that, especially people in recovery, and they're like, wait, you do what?
And how long have you and Clay been back together, living in the same house?
We, this year will be almost 6 years clean, and we've lived together for about 2 years now.
Oh my
So we were
goodness.
apart for quite a while.
Well, I'm so proud of you guys for staying clean for this long and taking it one day at a time and coming through everything that you guys faced and just
Yeah,
really coming out on the other side with wonderful perspective, with your family intact, with the life that you really wanted to live. It was just waiting for you on the other side of all of this. And I
yeah.
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're pretty happy. We take it one day at a time. I love talking to other couples because the statistics on couples getting clean together, I mean, the statistics on anybody getting clean and staying clean are very low. Even
Mhm.
going through a rehab, it's less than 2% that actually stay clean for any
Wow.
rehab. For couples to get clean and stay clean together is extremely rare. But the one piece of advice that I would give is do it on your own. Don't worry about what the other person is doing. You focus on you and do what you need to do and be apart from each other because
Mhm.
addiction is not the problem is not the alcohol and the drugs. That's the solution for us. We have
Mm,
it's a deeper spiritual thing that you're going through that you need to deal with. The drugs and the alcohol just cover it up and makes you feel
wow.
normal. So it's not the drugs that are the problem, it's you that is the problem. And you have to deal with that before you can deal with anything else.
Oh my goodness, that is profound. I think you do look at the drugs and alcohol as the demon in the
Right.
situation.
But the
Mhm.
cause is something deeper and it's different for everybody. And but there is a way out. You don't have to live that way. If you're willing to, you know, take advice and do what other people suggest that have been through it and know what they're talking about. I mean, I remember there's days that I prayed for the willingness to be willing to learn.
Wow.
You think you're on the right track, you think you know everything and you don't. And I don't care if you have 60 days or 60 years, you still don't know everything.
Mm,
You know a lot more at 60 years, but you just have to be willing.
I love that. Is there anything else you wanna add before we close it out?
I'm so thankful that I have such a support system and a family that supports me. A lot of people in the family don't understand addiction, and that's okay. They just need to be supportive. And thank God they don't understand. It's like good. I'm glad you don't because if you did, it would mean that you were in it too. But just having a support system, surrounding yourself with people, that have been there, done that is the most important thing.
Well said. Very well said. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and being willing to share
Thank
your
you.
story, being open and vulnerable. And I just know that the people listening are going to get something out of it, no matter what they're up against in life.
I
You're
hope so.
a great inspiration and a great example. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, friend, for stopping by the Gen X Juggler podcast today. I hope you enjoyed listening to Krystal's story. We can apply so many of the lessons she learned through her journey to any difficulties we may face in our own lives. She spoke about feeling unhelpable, like there was just no way out. I know we can feel that way sometimes, but her story shows us that if we're willing to do the work, even when we have to pray for the willingness to be willing, I felt that in my soul, we can get through the hard stuff and get back to the good stuff. That does it for this episode of the Gen X Juggler podcast. I look forward to our next time together. Until then, friends, let's keep on juggling.
Nobody's ever gonna take your place. Yeah, I think we should meet in the middle. I follow you 'cause you're the light of the day. I need you like you need me, it's so simple. It's so simple.